Hey, I want to welcome everybody to episode 8 of my series, The Strange and Unexplained Phenomena of the South Mountains of North Carolina. I am your host, Kaiser Rebel, and we're going to get right into it here in just a minute. A couple things that I want to talk about first. Tonight's episode is titled, Do They Kill for Sport? And at this point, I'm going to strongly urge viewer discretion. And I'm not doing that for dramatic purposes. Tonight's topic is one of the darker parts of the cryptid phenomena here in the South Mountains, other places in the country, and other places in the world. And so I do urge viewer discretion. I'm going to answer a question that I've been asked several times, I guess, by folks who are new to the series, who hadn't seen some of the episodes at the beginning. But I've been asked, where are the South Mountains, and how long does this history go back? So the South Mountains is a mountain chain in the foothills of western North Carolina. It includes the North Carolina counties of Cleveland County, Burke County, Rutherford County, and McDowell County. 100,000 acres, and then you add into the equation the periphery of wilderness around it, and you easily add into the mix tens of thousands of additional acres of wilderness. And many parts of the wilderness of this area is very rugged. Now, as far as the history, there's the misconception that the cryptid phenomena, anyway, which is what I focused on so far, began in the late 1970s, and that's simply not the case. And I offer into evidence the fact that I have interviewed people who are elderly now, in their 80s, who have spoken of stories and accounts that they experienced when they were young, but they've also spoken of accounts that was passed on to them from their parents and even their grandparents. So we're going back 100 years. But my gut instinct is that this goes back to all the way to pre-European days, to when this area was inhabited in part by the Cherokee as well as the Catawba Indians. And there are no hard and fast answers about, well, when was the first account. We just can't put a date on it, but I can simply say with great confidence that it goes way further back than the 1970s. And I'll get into that more when I do my next live. I'll talk about that again. Now, tonight's episode, do they kill for sport? The reports of animals being killed and animals disappearing are not few and far between. And in the interviews that I've had, the people who've come to me, I've heard numerous stories in which they have had animals killed violently and not eaten, and of course animals simply disappearing. For example, a 300-pound pig disappearing out of the pig lot, never to be seen again, or to later be found in the woods dead of a horrible death, but not eaten at all. And strangely enough, predators had not messed with it, and that's a commonality among many of the accounts that I've collected. But pigs, goats, dogs, those three seem to be a target of whatever it is that inhabits the wilderness of this area. But we're going to focus on dogs. And mainly because I have had personal experience in one case with a dog, and then personal knowledge of a couple of other cases, as well as I said, the accounts that's been shared to me by other people of the South Mountains area. I mentioned goats. There's a number of reports that I've collected or that I've heard where the goats were found simply with their necks broken, laying there dead, not eaten, not predated on by anything. And I mentioned the pigs. But being a dog person, that's near and dear to my heart, and that, I guess, upsets me more than anything. And again, that's why I urge the viewer discretion. I'm going to focus on two stories in particular. The first one is the story of a hound dog. Now, I want you to know that I personally saw this dog after the attack. And not only that, I provided care for it. And I saw its injuries, and we're going to get into that. The dog in question at one time was a dog who would, day or night, be in the woods in the area in which it lived. Chasing deer, raccoon, squirrel, whatever, possums. He was just a runner and a treer. And to hear him barking down in those woods was a beautiful sight. But he suddenly, and again, I had personal interaction with this animal, but he suddenly stopped going into the woods at night, and then eventually he stopped going in during the day. And that was puzzling to me, although I had my suspicions. And he was found in a barn, whimpering, and it was brought to my attention, and I went to see the dog. And initially, I knew that something had violently attacked this poor animal. And he was, I don't know, a 70-pound dog, somewhere in that range, maybe 80. And upon initially looking at him, I could see some wounds that were just not characteristic of any known thing. For example, a bear. I had a dog that was attacked by a bear. There was a swat of a bear's claw across his rump. The dog started running, didn't run quick enough, and you saw those claw marks, just as pretty as you please, across the dog's rump. And bears, generally speaking, don't attack dogs to the point that they are injured, to the extent that this dog that I'm speaking of was injured. He had, across his entire back of his rump, it was abraded horribly bad. And I looked closer, and it appeared to me in the abrasions in his hide was stuck pieces of tree bark. And that told me that the dog had in some fashion simply been slammed against a tree. And he had puncture wounds about that big around, all the way around his back and in parts of his neck and his abdomen. And they seemed to be sequential, as in something had grabbed it. That's what the wounds told me. And it had a hole underneath it. The dog had a hole underneath his armpit, which seemed to be from being jerked upward. And I surmised that he was grabbed by his leg and slammed against the tree, creating that horrible injury to his backside. And it was sheer brutal force. And I attended to the dog. I'm not a veterinarian by no means, but I've owned a zillion dogs in my life, and I did the best I could for him. But apparently, we were going to take him to the vet the next morning. This was at nighttime, and he had internal injuries that were massive. So when we compare that to previous reports, we see this commonality of these very violent attacks, whether it be on dogs or goats or pigs, even a few cats along the way. But there was no doubt in my mind that something huge, powerful, and extremely intent on hurting something had attacked that dog. Second story that I will share before I end the video, it's a simple story. A large dog, 80, 90 pounds, was found alive in a creek. A fair piece from civilization. And simply put, his back was broken. And the attending vet said, I have no clue how this dog's back got broke, except something just broke it by sheer force. There was no external injuries. So I keep my dogs locked up around here at night. You guys, I appreciate it. And everybody, keep an eye on your babies. Thank you all.